Hello, this is Andrew Anderson. In this video, we're going to look at scheduling in MS Project. In particular, we're going to look at three components of scheduling: duration, work, and units. You can see that we set this particular project up here with 6 different tasks. We have a column for duration. We have a column that shows work. We have a column that shows what's referred to as type. And we're going to have a column with resource names and predecessors also displayed. We're going to try to show you the relationship between duration, work, and units as we move forward. Let's first look at duration. Duration is the amount of time we have allocated for each of the tasks. In other words, the difference between the start date and the end date. Task A, for example, we've allocated 10 days for that project to be done. We have not assigned any work to it at this point. We'll see that as we move forward. Second, the third column then is the work column. Work represents the amount of time that resources are actually assigned or allocated to the particular task that we have. We'll see that as we move forward. The type, we're going to show you how that impacts the relationship between duration, work, and units here in a minute. The resource names are blank at this point. We're going to assign those and see how they are impacted by the type associated with each of the tasks. We set up predecessors so none of the tasks overlap, so we have no resource allocation issues that we have to worry about conflicts. Point out a couple things under the second and third column. Duration column, you notice we've set up durations of 10 days for the first 4 tasks, 5 days for the 5th and 6th tasks. You notice we have set up only work hours for 2 of the tasks. Task D we've set up as being 8 hours. Task F we set up to be 4 hours. If you look at that, we're in essence saying that task D, we're going to give somebody 10 days to actually complete the task, but the actual amount of work amongst those 10 days is only going to be 8 hours in duration. Assuming that somebody working full-time would work 8 hours a day, if we assign them to work on the task D for the full time, 10 days, that'd be 8 times 10, that's 80 hours of work. But in this case, we're saying that work does not take 80 hours. It's going to be done over a period of 10 days, but it only requires 8 hours of work. Again, we'll see that here as we move forward. Let's toggle over and look at the units or the workers that we're going to use in this particular project. In the resource sheet, we set up 3 different workers, A, B, and C. The only difference you'll notice that workers A and C are going to be assigned 100% to the project, while worker B is only going to be 50%. We have not assigned any costs related to it since we're only worried about scheduling for this particular video. We've toggled back to the Gantt chart view, and we're going to now assign the resources and see how they impact the various relationships between duration. We're going to go up to the first task. We're going to assign worker A to the first task. Worker A was a 100% worker, so if we assign a 100% worker to a task that lasts 10 days, we assume that each day is 8 hours in duration. 8 times 10 would be 80 hours. So again, when I click on it, you see the 80 hours. So worker A times the duration resulted in 80 hours of work. That's because we're using what's called fixed unit. Fixed unit is driven by the unit itself, the worker in this case. So that's why we ended up with 80 hours, because we applied a worker that was going to be 100% time to those 10 days of duration. Let's now go to the second task. We're going to assign 2 workers. We'll assign worker A again. Worker A is 100%, so we assign that worker first. That creates 80 hours of work. Now we're going to add a worker B to that. Worker B is a half-time employee, so they would work in equivalent to 4 hours a day, so that would add another 40 hours of work if we applied it to the entire 10 days. Let's see what happens. You can see what happens is it kept the 80 hours because we had put the first worker at 80. It assumed that it was going to be 80 hours. So what it did said that you're going to add another worker, so it's going to just simply take less time to do that work. And so the 10 days went 6.67 days in terms of work. Let's repeat that. Let's just delete those and show you how what happens when we add both the workers at the same time. So if I go up here and go return that to 10 days, let's return to where we were before to see the impact. Okay, so again, back to 10 days with those set to fixed units. I'm going to add my 2 workers. I'm going to add this time worker A and worker B. I'm adding them at the same time rather than one after another. Now you notice that Again, because I added them both at the same time, it said worker A was 80 hours, worker B was 40 hours over a 10 days, so we ended up now with the worker being 120 hours. So how you add them has an impact. You notice when I added them, one individually, the first person actually established the work hours, the second person then altered some other factor. Let's go back and do it again, and I'm going to just go back and eliminate those, go back to 0. Let's do it one at a time. So eliminate again, add worker A, which would set the work at 80 hours. I come back and I add a second worker, B, a half-time worker at 40 hours. Again, what it will normally do is then fix the hours and go back and change the duration. So if you look at it, it did. But you notice here I have a flag that pops up that gives me some options to alter that. So if I pull the flag down, it said I'm going to reduce the duration but keep the same amount of work. So in other words, that's what it did. But I do have the option to do some other things. For example, if I want to increase the amount of work but keep the duration, that's in essence what happened when I added both workers at the same time. Or I could reduce the hours the resources work per day. In other words, alter the units. So the first one is duration, the second one is work, the third one is units. So I have the ability to control all three. So again, if I go back and click on that second one, it worked just as if I added both workers at the same time. You can see that again if I was to add worker A first, I fix it at 8 hours, but now I come back and add worker C, which is another worker that works 100%, but because we're applying 2 workers to the 80 hours of tasks, it should actually alter it. Again, we get my flag up, so I have the option of doubling, in this case, the hours, or I could simply say I'm going to reduce the duration but keep the same amount of work, which would have been 80 hours. So again, you can see 80 hours of work, but now it's only going to take 5 days because I'm putting 2 workers on the task rather than 1. The next type is called fixed work. In other words, the variable that's fixed is the work. So the 8 hours becomes the fixed unit, and we're going to alter the others. So again, let's go back and try the same issue. I have a fixed worker. I'm going to add worker A. Worker A works 100% of the time. Normally that would be 10 days at 8 hours a day would normally be 80 hours, but we told it no, it's only going to be 8 hours of work. So when I apply that worker, you'll see what happens. It's still 10 days. It's 8 hours, still 8 hours of work, but worker A, instead of working 100% of their time on that particular task, will only work 10% of their time on that task. So that'd be equivalent if it spent 1 8-hour day or some variation where they only end up working 8 hours on that particular task. Let's now work on task E. Task E, the type is fixed duration. That means the duration variable becomes the fixed one, and we then alter the other 2 based on that. So no matter what we do, the 5 days will remain unless we make an attempt to make that adjustment. So let's pick the worker A here. Apply them to the task, and worker C to the task. These are 2 100% workers. Typically that would mean that they would work 5 days, 8 hours a day. That'd be 40 hours each. There'd be 2 of them. That typically means that the total would be 80 hours. Again, the days remain fixed. If we go down to task F, is fixed work. That means the variable that's fixed is the work. We have set the task at 4 hours. So again, something else will be adjusted based on that. So let's simply add worker A, which is 100%, to that. So 100%. Again, because the days are 5 days, the hours are 4. There's only 4 hours of work. This worker then would need to reduce their time on this project to 10%, simply because there is no more than 4 hours of work on this particular project. If I actually add another worker, worker C, to the task, again, you'll notice what happens. There's an adjustment now because the time was fixed at 4 hours. If we put 2 workers on it, each one of those workers working at 1%, then it actually takes it down to slightly less than half a day's worth of work in order to be able to get it done with the work hours fixed at 4.